All right, let's do this thing. You're watching Philadelphia 76ers now. Hope everybody out there is having a fantastic Thursday as we all gear up to have a fantastic Memorial Day weekend. Coming up, some major Sixers offseason rumors. This coming from NBA reporter from Yahoo Sports Jake Fischer, revealing just a lot of information on the Sixers offseason plans. Keep in mind that he does oftentimes have the inside track to this organization. He's written a book on the Philadelphia 76ers and how they operated during the process era. So, of course, you put some stock into a reporter who does have some background with this organization. Before we take a look at all of that buzz, make sure you subscribe to the channel. We've been crushing the content game ever since the buzzer sounded in Game 6 at the Wells Fargo Center in the first round for Sixers-Knicks. And we're going to continue to keep you updated on all things Sixers all year long. So lock us in, hit that sub button as we approach 16,000 subscribers. Let's start off with this from Fischer. With those bookends, he's talking about Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey in place, Philadelphia is focused on filling the gap between them with an elite two-way wing, sources said. Philadelphia, according to league sources, views its opportunity this summer as something that's just shy of Golden State's rare opening to sign Durant as a free agent without the league's cap smoothing in 2016. The Sixers are willing to spend future money and sacrifice draft capital, league sources told Yahoo Sports, in the name of chasing next year's title. George has been on Morey's radar. He's talking about Paul George, of course, pictured in the background, since the executive's time running the Rockets. Will an optimal fit on paper be enough to persuade George to abandon all of that with Los Angeles for Philadelphia or somewhere else? It seems to be clear, and you think about the verbiage that Jake Fischer used there, a lot of it is specific. Philadelphia views this as a Warriors-like opportunity from several years ago. When they went out and they acquired Kevin Durant, somebody's got to be giving him some nuggets inside the Sixers organization. And it also seems to be clear from Fischer and from others, Chip, that Paul George is the Sixers' number one target. And it just makes me think of what Daryl Morey said right after the year. We want an elite two-way wing who can score and perform in the playoffs, who can get it done on both ends. That's Paul George.
Yeah, and look, it's clear that they want Paul George, and it's pretty clear that Daryl Morey is not going to sit back and collect some role players and round out the roster. He's going to go star hunting, right? Yep. So I know some of Sixers fans want to see them build around Embiid and Maxey and build up the roster that way. Others want them to go get a star like Paul George, LeBron James, other guys we'll talk about later. It's obvious Morey wants this star. That seems to be the direction they're at least going to attempt to go. Of course, they can only do so much in trying to lure Paul George away from the Clippers. But I'm a fan of bringing in Paul George. I've said it before. I'll say it again. You've been rocking with Tobias Harris as your third best player for the most part over the past few seasons. Look, I get wanting to build around Maxey, build around Embiid, but especially with Embiid's injury history, which was also part of the reason Fischer said that they're going this route and going star hunting because they know Embiid tends to break down come postseason time.
Right.
I think getting that third star who can be reliable is probably the smart way to go, and it looks like that's what Morey is going to do.
Just imagine what Paul George could have done against Jalen Brunson defensively in the first round against the Knicks. I think Brunson has a much more difficult time as compared to having Nick Batum and Kelly Oubre guarding Jalen Brunson. Now, you mentioned durability and reliability. That's been an issue with Paul George, but it could help you manage the minutes for Joel Embiid because compared to when he was out and it was the Tyrese Maxey show, now it could be the Tyrese Maxey show in addition to Paul George, who I think that you can use that as a recruiting pitch for because he's still going to have many a nights in which he's going to be able to get shots up. More from Jake Fischer here as we go from Paul George to a conversation about OG Anunoby. Tobias Harris, by all accounts, is not expected to be back with the Sixers. To fill that two-way max salary slot Harris was once expected to uphold, only OG Anunoby would represent an option close to George's prowess. and close to representing a top-tier third star who could test the open market. Anunoby is widely expected to decline his $19.9 million player option for next year after being dealt to New York before the NBA trade deadline. There was word circling among team officials at last week's NBA draft combine that Anunoby's situation with the Knicks is not as cut and dried. Perhaps those signals to rival teams will only help Anunoby elicit a larger dollar figure from the Knicks. But various teams left Chicago with the belief that Anunoby could reach unrestricted free agency and consider deals from other franchises in addition to New York, sources said. Now, earlier this week, we talked about OG Anunoby. Is he more realistic than we thought? That's really the question that Chip and I are posing. And again, Anunoby, Paul George, two players who are different, two players who are really, really good respectively when they're healthy and playing up to their potential, two players who are very, very good as far as their impact on both sides of the basketball floor. And both can play elite lockdown defense. I think the New York Knicks are going to do everything that they can to bring back Anunoby because when Anunoby, Brunson, Julius Randle were all playing together, and then even when Randle went out, Anunoby was in the lineup with the current construction of that team that we see now, even though they obviously suffered a lot of injuries, they were one of the best teams in the NBA. Defensive and offensive ratings were very, very good. And because of that, New York saying, we lost in Game 7 to Indiana shorthanded, we run it back. I thought that New York had the toughness and the physicality to challenge Boston. Is that the move that they try to make in getting aggressive? What do you think about OG Anunoby here, Chip? Obviously, we talked about him, as I mentioned earlier this week.
Yeah, and what you said is exactly why I've kind of assumed for a while that the Knicks were going to re-sign Anunoby and there wouldn't really be much to talk about when it came to OG. You know, they trade for him at the deadline, and the team was tremendous. Before Julius Randle went out, I think they only played 12 games together, but they didn't really lose when Brunson, Anunoby, Randle were on the floor. Even once Randle went out, they were amazing. Now, Anunoby does scare me a little bit more with the injury concerns, and now that he's really coming up as more of a realistic free agent target, you know, would you consider giving him 30, 35, even $40 million is what's being reported right now is Anunoby's market. 40 million, 35 million, it's a bit much for me. Again, not because of the talent. He's a talented player, and he showed so much more offensively than I ever thought he could, especially off the dribble, getting to the mid-range, attacking the basket. But, man, he only plays 40, 50, maybe 60 games a season. Was injured for that Raptors postseason run when they won that championship with Nick Nurse. Again, injured this past playoffs for the New York Knicks. Tried to play through it, but couldn't. So it would scare me a little bit. I understand the whole, drive the price up for the Knicks and all that. But what happens if you're the Sixers, you offer OG 35, 40 million thinking, the Knicks have to re-sign him. They have to offer more because they traded for him. And then they don't, and all of a sudden, you're stuck paying a player who could get injured every year upwards of $35 million. It's not a great combination with Joel Embiid, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, fair points there. And the thing with OG, after the first 2 games in the series against Philly, I thought he played really well. He got downhill. He was more aggressive. He was more assertive. I just worry about the Tobias Harris element of that. It's I shouldn't tell you that you need to get more aggressive. That should come naturally. You kind of want that dog type of mentality. That player is not going to shy away from the big moment. You shouldn't have to push that player. I wonder if Nick Nurse's familiarity with OG Anunoby could help him in that regard. What say you? So far, we've talked about Paul George. We've talked about OG Anunoby. More stars to get to. Who is your number one Sixers free agent target? Not trade target like a Mikal Bridges, free agent target. Let us know. And stay tuned. As I mentioned, more stars that we're going to get to on the Sixers rumors front. Donovan Mitchell, Brandon Ingram, Jimmy Butler. It's coming up right around the corner here on 76ers Now by Chat Sports. Chase Sr., Jake Chipper here with you. First, today's show, sponsored by Prize Picks, daily fantasy sports made easy. You pick 2 or more players. You choose more or less on their projected stats, and you can win up to 25 times your money. Head to prizepicks.com/CLNS for a $100 deposit match. What that means is you put in $100, you get $100 back. It's $200 to play DFS with. Game 2, Celtics-Pacers after Indiana choked away Game 1. Always foul up 3. Come on, Rick Carlisle. Derek White, more than 9.5 rebounds and dimes. Tyrese Halliburton, more than 19 points. Come on, you got to be a little bit aggressive there in making that pick because I love that selection. Miles Turner, more than 25.5 points, rebounds, and assists as Boston is still without Kristaps Porzingis, who could make his return in Game 4 on the road against Indiana. Win big money. Withdraw your winnings within the Prize Picks app. Pick more, pick less. Pick Prize Picks, the largest and most used daily fantasy sports app here in North America. Fischer with some reports on the trade market. We talked free agency so far. How about Philadelphia making a little bit of a splash trade? We start off with Donovan Mitchell on the trade front. If Philadelphia can't sign someone of that magnitude via free agency, the Sixers will likely have several options to pursue on the trade market. Donovan Mitchell's upcoming extension talks with Cleveland will loom large as Georgia's. Without an extension with the Cavs, you can add Philly to any proverbial group of interested suitors in Mitchell's services. Although Cleveland's brass expressed confidence that Mitchell will extend with the Cavs, the dismissal of head coach J.B. Bickerstaff has been seen around the league as an inevitable move in the team's efforts toward keeping Mitchell long-term. The growing possibility of Mitchell remaining in Cleveland, at least through the start of 2024-25, is what also sparked word throughout the draft combine of Clutch Sports, preparing to ask the Cavaliers for a trade for all-star point guard Darius Garland. I think either way, we said it the other day, big changes could be in store for Cleveland. Well, one domino has already fallen. The firing of J.B. Bickerstaff, who has helped the Cavs to the second round of the NBA playoffs this past year, and he's helped lift them really out of ineptitude over the last couple of years, but some of the in-game, in-series adjustments a little bit troublesome. For D-Mitch, the question really becomes, Chip, is he a good fit? Because I'm not sure it is. You know, a lot of teams have tried to replicate having that backcourt duo like Steph Curry and Klay Thompson. You think about what the Blazers did with Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum. It led to them making it to the Western Conference Finals once, and then they got dusted by Golden State. Other teams have tried to find that backcourt combination. The Chicago Bulls. It just didn't really work out in recent memory, right? Like, it just wasn't a fit that made a lot of sense with DeMar DeRozan, Zach LaVine, Darius Garland, Donovan Mitchell. What has it yielded them? To me, it's just two ball-heavy guards who at the end of the game, you're like, well, I want Maxey to take the shot, but Donovan Mitchell's taking the shot. And then where does Joel Embiid fit in? Maybe this helps out Embiid, because we've seen him struggle in some of those crunch time clutch spots, and now you have those two guards. Does that complement Joel Embiid a little bit better? Because those other teams didn't have a center like Joel Embiid. So the point here, I'm very conflicted about that backcourt duo.
Yeah, it's very tough. I do think Maxey and Embiid, or Maxey and Mitchell rather, could play well off each other. I think they could fit in the backcourt together. My issue arises where, you know, if you bring in a player like Paul George, right, he fills that big wing, two-way player that you need on the roster. If you bring in a Donovan Mitchell, that's great. You know, I think it would fit well with Maxey offensively, but then I feel like you would still need to go find that big wing, two-way player. So bringing in Mitchell, while, you know, it helps offensively, I don't think it fills really your biggest need. You'd still be left with more challenges team-building-wise, as opposed to if you get someone that fits a little bit better defensively, then you can kind of fill up the roster with role players and you'll be fine. With Mitchell, I feel like you still need to go out and, you know, get an OG Anunoby or get another player that can help you on the wing, because, you know, Mitchell's not really going to do that. Now, we'll see what happens with Mitchell. You know, there's reports that he liked J. Bickerstaff, now they fire him. There's reports that he didn't. There's conflicting stuff. We'll see what happens with their head coaching search, because will they involve him in the head coaching search? What if they hire a head coach? Mitchell doesn't like his direction for the team, his plan for the team. Then he asks out. So we'll see. I think it's going to be a big thing to watch these next couple of months for Cleveland, because I do think one of Darius Garland or Donovan Mitchell will be traded. Obviously, Darius Garland, not a target for the Sixers, too redundant with Tyrese Maxey. But Mitchell, if he becomes available, gonna cost a lot. And honestly, I don't know if the Sixers even have enough. They have some draft capital. Would the Cavs be interested in any of the players the Sixers could sign and trade? I'm not so sure. I think there's probably other teams that could offer better packages. But Mitchell, definitely a conflicting player there. We'll see how that goes in Cleveland.
Yeah, and like the plus is that you have two guards who can score at all three levels and get a bucket at any time. The concern is the fit, and is that other guard just kind of waiting around the perimeter, standing there idly, waiting to get involved, and then they're not able to catch that rhythm because the other player is taking up a lot of opportunities. My team building strategy as far as roster construction goes, and you think back again to what Daryl Morey said, we want a wing. Outside of Steph Curry, there just haven't been a lot of small guards who are the number one options for championship winning teams. It has been a wing-heavy league for a long time. You want to say, well, Chase, Magic Johnson was a point guard. Yeah, at like 6'9". But you think about Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant and LeBron James and Kevin Durant. And now you look at some of the teams who are left in the NBA right now. Luka Doncic, pretty much a wing, right? I know he handles the ball, but he's pretty much a wing. Anthony Edwards. And then on the east side of things, you have Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, two wings, and then the best player for Indiana, Tyrese Halliburton, but he's also a really tall player. Tyrese Maxey and Donovan Mitchell are shorter guards who are traditional kind of like off-ball guards a little bit, even though Maxey can play both. Certainly fascinating. All right, now let's get to Brandon Ingram here. Rival teams are also preparing for the chance that New Orleans looks to move Brandon Ingram this summer as well. A far murkier dynamic is that of Jimmy Butler, who's extension eligible in Miami. The Sixers, of course, have been in the Butler business before. I like how he worded that. He and Embiid maintained a close relationship, and Butler may have been the all-star whom Morey, most often attempted to acquire in Houston, sources said. At this juncture, however, league executives are of the mind that Butler will most likely remain with the Heat. So two players here that we got to hit on. Brandon Ingram, Jimmy Butler. Are they good fits? Who's the best trade target for Philadelphia? I think Ingram, he gets dealt. I think Butler stays with Miami. The big looming thing with Miami and Butler, if they don't sign him to a contract extension, it's probably Butler's last opportunity to get a max deal. Does that cause a little bit of a rift between the front office and Jimmy Butler, who we know does not shy away from being vocal? And this is coming off the heels of Pat Riley saying, if you're not playing, you should keep your mouth shut. Does that start the bad blood? Money takes care of it, and Butler has been the perfect Miami Heat player. Heat culture, toughness, resiliency, big-time performer in big-time spots, a player who's a grinder. He's maximized his craft. He loves getting in the lab. So I think Butler stays with Miami ultimately. Brandon Ingram, I think he could get dealt because the Pelicans have a little bit of a logjam. And I thought that when they benched him at moments this year in the playoffs, when he wasn't on the floor, at moments in the regular season and in the playoffs, that's a team that played really well. With C.J. McCollum, Zion Williamson finally stayed healthy in the regular season. He played 70-plus games. You have Herb Jones. You have Alvarado, who's a really good player. We'll see what happens with Jonas Valanciunas, probably not coming back, but the roster construction there could change a little bit. What do you think about the fits there, Chip, Ingram, Butler?
Yeah, I think when talking about these two guys, it kind of goes back to what Fischer had reported about, Morey and the Sixers, they're willing to sacrifice the future in a way to really make a run for it this season. And that's why I feel like they'd be more inclined to go after a player like Jimmy, because I feel like Jimmy is a better player right now. If I had to take one just for next season, I'm taking Jimmy. And as you mentioned, his contract is coming up. He's going to need an extension. He's getting up there in age, mid-30s. Are the Heat going to want to pay him that much? I think the Sixers would be fine doling out $35, $40 million, even more to Jimmy Butler just for the ability to bring him in for 1 year, 2 years, however long, he still has his prime left, or at least this current version of his prime. They'd be fine taking that risk because, again, Fisher said Morey and the Sixers are going all in this year. And so I think Brandon Ingram, well, I do think he would fit well, and he's younger and still has opportunity to get better and not going to cost as much. I think he'd be more of a backup plan for Morey and the Sixers, where they're looking to get a vet, a guy who's battle tested, where Ingram has had up and down success in the postseason, and another guy who's been injured. But I think Morey, Fischer said it, he's been interested in Butler in the past with Houston. Obviously, he's still interested in him now. So I think Butler, the small chance that he does ask out of Miami, Morey would be all over that, and I could see them throwing a bag his way.
Yeah, and I think that Butler would be such a good fit on the Sixers. And you just talk about the Sixers organization as a whole being mentally fragile, coming up short in big spots. We know about not getting over the second round hump since 2001, haven't made it to the Eastern Conference Finals since then. You want a dog. You want a player who shows up when it matters. You want a player who's going to keep Joel Embiid accountable and maximize him, but also help out Tyrese Maxey too, who's comfortable playing off ball. And you want to go all in on winning the title. Jimmy Butler would be perfect. For me, I worry about the personality fit between Ingram and the city of Philadelphia. I'm not sure how he'd deal with the pressure of playing in this city. We round out with talking about some wings. In the event Philadelphia is unable to land a big fish this summer, look for the Sixers to flush out their roster with similar non-guaranteed money as of the past season's approach. Philadelphia sources said will prioritize being nimble with salaries in order to move whenever the next disgruntled star becomes available. Veteran wings like Klay Thompson and Kentavious Caldwell-Pope would fall on the Sixers' list of targets for similar 1+1 contracts, sources said. Striking out on a big-time wing would also leave the door open for Philly to consider taking back a player such as Zach LaVine in the event Chicago or another team is willing to attach draft capital to move off salary. Kyle Kuzma will be another advanced wing player on the trade market, although Washington's asking price for the veteran scorer prior to February's trade deadline was too rich for most rival teams. In another year of waiting around, or is another year of waiting around smart, would players like LaVine, Kuzma move the needle? Chip, I think this would be a disaster. Philadelphia goes into this offseason, most pivotal offseason that they've had, maybe in franchise history. You have the blossoming, burgeoning superstar in Tyrese Maxey. You have the proven commodity in Joel Embiid. You have an elite coach in Nick Nurse. You have roster flexibility with not a lot of players under contract for this team. You have a chance here where you have a rabid fan base, iconic brand, great history, 2 stars, good coach, a lot of money. You have an opportunity to make a splash. If you can't make that splash in free agency, and then that next step, you can't trade for a Butler, an Ingram, a Kevin Durant, a Mikal Bridges, who's my dream target, and then you have to settle for a Klay Thompson or a Kyle Kuzma, or take back a Zach LaVine who's a chucker who can't play defense, that would reignite our nightmares of this organization, our frustrations with this team that they're never going to get over the hump.
And I read that the Sixers could consider another year of taking back salaries and expiring deals, basically doing what they did this year again. And I was just like, oh no. Because it's time for Daryl Morey to live up to the billing.
Put up or shut up, man.
Put up or shut up time. You're getting paid a lot of money to make this team the best they can be. And I'm sick of, I don't want to hear this offseason, oh, we tried for Paul George. We tried for LeBron. We tried for Jimmy. We tried for all these stars. And now we have to settle for signing a Klay Thompson or a Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, who I like both players. Both are going to be solid role players next year. Stay away from Zach LaVine and Kyle Kuzma, in my opinion. I'm not a big fan of either player. But I can't do, and I don't think it's smart, to have another year of just saying, oh, we're going to sign expiring contracts, maybe acquire some more picks, and just hope that another star asks out. You can't just sit around on your hands and wait and hope that eventually a star is going to ask out. You got to go make it happen right now, Morey. You can't just keep waiting and saying, oh, we tried. You have everything in front of you this offseason. You don't need to kick the can down the road anymore. Embiid's doing nothing but getting older. I get you have Maxey, up and coming, but Embiid is in his prime right now. Not in 3 years, not in 5 years. He's in his prime right now. I don't want to see another year of signing 1-and-1s. 1-year deal, player option, clear up space again next year. This is the offseason, Morey. You're getting paid a lot. Make it happen.
Daryl Morey is one of the highest paid executives in the NBA as compared to previous off seasons when he's had to undo what was done before him. Now, he's got a clean slate. He can put this team together as he sees fit, and he can live up to that contract that Josh Harris is paying him. It's put up or shut up time for Daryl Morey. The pressure's on him, and he got that contract extension. He's going to be here for a little while. Get the job done. Who is your number one Sixers trade target? We asked you free agency target a little bit earlier. Hope everybody enjoyed the show. Kind of a report, our take. Continue to keep it locked here. 76ers Now, bringing you some great content. The juices are flowing, man.